So let's continue talking about selling to the customer. We in the last section talked about the multi-point inspection form and how important of a relationship building tool that is and how important it is as a sales tool. Well, there are a number of other things that we should talk about as sales tools. We said a couple sections ago that knowledge is power, knowledge is everything. And those customers at your counter that are feeling very anxious because A, they don't know, and B, they have to have you, and C, the industry has this terrible reputation. What do you have at your disposal to give them knowledge? You may or may not have an assistant service manager or service consultant that can provide them knowledge in an articulate manner. Sometimes individuals have just enough technical knowledge, but not quite enough. How do you get across what's wrong with a vehicle? There are a number of ways of doing this, and I think by far the easiest way is what many organizations do, and it's what I call show and tell. We walk the customer out to their vehicle, out in the repair shop, and we show them what's wrong. Now, some shops have a big sign hanging somewhere on the door out to the shop that says, due to insurance regulations, no customers allowed. Well, think about what message that sends, and whether it's true or not, I don't know, I won't question that, but think about the message it sends to the customer. It basically tells the customer, you stay here, we're taking your car back there, and no, you can't see it. Well, how would you feel if they took your 5-year-old to the dentist, and the dentist says, we're taking your 5-year-old back here, you have to stay here, you can't see him? It wouldn't make you feel real good, right? Think about how customers feel about their cars. To customers, cars are very, very personal items. So those signs saying absolutely no customers allowed, I'm not real warm and fuzzy about. There are better signs out there. You can get the signs that say due to OSHA regulations, customers aren't allowed out here unaccompanied. And if they're accompanied, that's fine. Well, that may very well be a better way of doing it, because by taking the customer out to their vehicle and showing them what's wrong physically with their vehicle, not only does it send the message that you are honest and forthright and transparent, but it also gives them the chance to see the person that's working on their car. Never ever underestimate the power of that. Many customers strongly dislike the fact that they no longer get to talk to the person working on their vehicle. They get to deal with the person here at the counter and not the technician out in the shop. Meeting the technician, having a conversation with the technician makes many customers feel very at ease. Now, there's another approach I take with that also. I tell technicians when I do technical training classes to introduce yourself to the customer. Make sure at the very least the customer understands who you are. Put their first name on the repair order or put their first name on the multi-point inspection form. Some organizations put employee number on there, technician number. That's not as good as putting Rick on the MPI or Joe on the repair order, because what's that customer going to do? If I take the customer out to the repair shop and I show them, hey, look, we did the 52-point inspection, we removed your wheels, here's what we see. Look at your brake rotors, and here's what they're supposed to look like. And look at your brake pads, and here's what caused that. And then the technician Joe is standing right there, and Joe can point this out or explain that to the customer. When I come back for another repair, that customer may very well ask for Joe. Hey, can Joe work on that? Because they formed a relationship. Oh, and what did we say trust was? How do we get to trust? Building relationships. It's all a part of getting to trust. So use show and tell as a policy to try to impart knowledge with your customers. Other ways, other tools that you can impart knowledge with your customers. There's a number of laminated posters out there. There's a number of electronic programs out there that show systems, that show system operation. Because show and tell works until you get to things like, I don't know, timing belts. And if I'm at the counter and I say, well, what's a timing belt? Why am I going to spend $300 on replacing it or $600 on replacing it? And you go, well, it connects the top to the bottom, goes round and around, and car won't run without it. And that's not enough for me. You're not going to take me out in the bay, pull a timing cover off to show me what a timing belt is. So you need a better tool. You need a picture or you need a video. Ask your parts suppliers what they have available. Oftentimes, parts distributors and parts suppliers have many of these tools available, either for free or for sale. Ask them what they have available. Keep an open mind. See what would work best. Ask your counter associates what they would like best to help them sell these things. All right? So identify what tools. that you have at your disposal. Now, there's some other simple things that you can do. I've seen shops where in a very nice waiting room, they've got a brand new roll cart from a tool company, a roll cart, nice and shiny, and it's filled with old and new parts so that customers can look at it. And or the service writer can come around the counter and pick up an old brake pad and a new brake pad and say, look, here's what a new one looks like. This is roughly what yours looks like. Or different wear patterns on brake pads. Or chunks of tires that they've cut up showing specific wear patterns. They're show and tell pieces where the customer doesn't have to go out in the shop. Maybe they're in a hurry, they don't have time, or they don't have the right shoes, or they're not interested, but the cart's right there. It gives the customer something to look at while they're waiting also. A very unique idea that I've seen is one waiting room created an entire wall of pegboard. So on that pegboard wall, they took new and used parts and they wire tied them to the wall. Nice and neat, they took all the sharp edges off, but it did the same thing the roll cart did, only in a bigger display. And the service writer could walk over and say, here's what a timing belt looks like. They had the crank pulley, the cam pulley, and the timing belt. And they can use it to explain. So think about what you can do in your shop. Just think about the hazards, the sharp edges, and dust and dirt and all that stuff, and do what you can for that. But you can create some very nice displays for little to no money. So all of these tools are to be used to impart knowledge to the customer. Knowledge is power. Knowledge will help that customer's anxiety come down. Introduce them to the technicians, take them out to the vehicle and show them the vehicle, and create something in your waiting room. It's all about education. Sales is education. Now, staying along the lines of selling tools and meeting customer expectations and customer retention, keeping them coming back to us, I want to talk very briefly about customer loyalty programs. Many shops aren't necessarily using customer loyalty programs right now. They feel like, well, you know what, I've got enough customers, I've got really good customers, they always come back to me. And yet I still hear from technicians and shop owners that take many of my technical classes that they've got a lot of customers that went somewhere else for an oil change. Or they say, you gotta love the person that went so-and-so and came to us because so-and-so had messed things up. Well, why are they going somewhere else? They're going somewhere else because they don't have loyalty to your shop or to John's shop or Joe's shop or my shop. How do you create loyalty? And in this market, loyalty can be really, really tough. People don't have a whole lot of automotive repair shop loyalty in a nutshell. So think about what you can do in your program and in your organization to create loyalty. Now, there's a lot of programs out there that you can use. They're very prominent in the OE dealership world, but you have access to them also if you're an independent. Some things as simple as punch cards. And you can make these up yourself. You can use a business software, a business card software to develop a punch card. And let's say buy 4 oil changes, get the 5th one free. People love free stuff. Well, what's the point? I mean, why would I want to give away an oil change? Keep in mind, I think giving away oil changes is a great thing. I mean, after all, how much gross is there in an oil change? Virtually nothing. What's an oil change cost you as an organization? Virtually nothing, and yet customers know they need oil changes. Why would I give away an oil change? It's touch points. I never want a customer to go anywhere else and have that other organization get a chance to show them better customer service than what I can provide. If a customer has a punch card for every 5th oil change is on us, they are far more likely to come back to us because they know they're going to get something free. Now, what does it do for you, the organization? First of all, it costs you very little. Second of all, it gets that vehicle on your lift in your bay and gives you the opportunity to find upsell opportunities, to use that multi-point inspection form with your customer, to give the service writer a chance to practice their sales skills with that customer. It's all about return visits, keeping the customer coming back. Other loyalty programs that you can implement, I have seen programs where if you do 5 oil changes with us or even 3 oil changes with us, you'll get 20% off your next preventative maintenance. Well, Great. Customers know they need oil changes. They know they need preventative maintenance. They perceive preventative maintenance as being very expensive. They see 20% off my next preventative maintenance. If I get 3, 4, or 5 oil changes done here, they're going to come back. Be creative with customer loyalty programs. You can manage them yourself. You can hire outside companies to manage them for you. I might suggest weekly drawings or monthly drawings for a free service. Drop your business card in the fishbowl and we'll pull it out once a month and you'll get a free oil change, a free service, whatever you choose. Make sure it's something you don't have a ton of gross in to begin with. Make sure it's something that's not going to cost you as a shop a lot of money, but it means something to the customer. You can create contests. I even saw one shop recently that did a name your price on a service. Now, you're not going to do this all the time, mind you, but you could run for a period of 2 days, name your price on an oil change. And even if that customer says, I'll give you $5 for the oil change, and you say yes, or they say, I want it for free, that's fine. You do your job. You do your job with a multi-point inspection form, you get that vehicle in the bay, you do the free oil change. Maybe they leave, but they leave having had an experience with you. And I promise you, every car on the road's going to break down. And whether they want to give you money that day or not, at some point they're going to have to give somebody some money, and you want them thinking of you. Here's the other reason you want customer loyalty. The other reason you want customer retention, customers coming back to you. Maybe you sell batteries, maybe you sell parts maybe you got a little showroom there and you're selling some parts out of it. You want customers thinking of you if they need a battery for the boat, if they need a snow brush for the winter. You want them always thinking of you for any of their automotive related needs. So consider customer loyalty programs, make one up yourself, think about what you can give away at little cost to you that means something to a customer. Think about having somebody else do it for you, but explore it. Challenge yourself to think outside the box. Observe what other organizations outside our industry of the automotive world are doing and pay attention to them. See if they're applicable to your business and your industry. More to follow. Now, one more very, very important point when it comes to customer relationships and process within your store or your service department, and that is follow-up. You can call follow-up whatever you want to call it. Doesn't matter to me. Some organizations call it tracking lost customers. Some call it your customer satisfaction follow-up. Some call it callbacks. Whatever you want to call it doesn't matter to me. What I want to get across to you is that somebody in your organization, or if you want to hire it out, that's okay too, but somebody needs to follow up with the customer in some manner. Whether it's email or phone, follow up with that customer to identify how their experience was, but more importantly, to identify if they had a poor experience. I mentioned earlier in a previous segment an oil change I had done, and I got home and I found mud in the rear of my car, and it was what I didn't expect. Now, I also commented that I never went back and I never called back. Well, I never went back because it was a half an hour away from me, and I didn't have time to spend another hour driving plus whatever time they wanted to clean the vehicle. I never called back because it didn't matter to me. I wasn't going back. Now, nobody called me back either. If they had called me back, they might have known a very, very important piece of information. Here's what I ask in my seminars. What is the problem with a lost customer? And I get all kinds of answers, but usually people dance around the real problem with a lost customer. I hear, you lost money. You lost all the referrals. They're going to tell 10 people. And it's all true. But the bigger, more important point to the problem with a lost customer is this, that you don't know you lost them. And if you don't know you lost a customer, you can't fix why you lost the customer. Lost customers are a huge, huge challenge. I challenge you as a shop, as an organization, to figure out how you can identify lost customers and put in place a process to follow up with those lost customers. If you don't want to follow up with all of your service customers, which you should, okay. But at the very least, Put a process in place to identify those customers you have not seen over a specific period of time. I was in an organization in the Midwest recently, and during a break, I walked up to the service counter, and they weren't very busy. They were pretty darn slow, actually. And I observed the service writer doing something. So I struck up a conversation with him, and I said, "Hey, what are you doing?" He says, "Oh, I'm calling my lost customers." I said, "Why?" Plain dumb. I said, "Why?" He says, "Because of what I learned." He says, "My system has the ability for me to pull a list of customers that haven't been here in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, whatever it is." He says, "So in my spare time, I'll run the report, usually once a month, and I'll leave it sitting here on the desk, and when I have nothing else to do, when things get slow, I will pick up the phone, I'll randomly call customers." And he says, "Oftentimes, I'll get them to come back in." And he says, "I'll generate about 20% of my business by calling lost customers, just because they forgot about us, or they forgot they needed an oil change done." He says, "But more importantly, what I discover is the reasons that I've lost some of these customers. I never knew that so-and-so was so upset with us. I never knew that when they left here, something happened, because they were like me. They never called back." So following up with your customers is a critical piece to customer satisfaction and growing your business. If you don't know why you lost them, you can't fix what processes are in place in your store now that caused you to lose them. So think about what processes you can put in place in your organization to encourage your associates to follow up with customers and call lost customers however you want to identify them. Maybe they haven't been there for 6 months, maybe you haven't seen them in 2 years. It doesn't matter. You determine for yourself what you consider a lost customer to be and put a process in place to follow up with them. There are many outside companies that are more than happy to help you with it. It'll cost you some money. I suggest you keep it in-house because it helps keep your people in line, recognizing what's really important for your customer base. And it's all about building trust. Keep up the great work. Okay, so we've been talking about building a customer's trust, and we talked about the customer satisfaction pyramid with the exceptional service experience at the base, followed by fixed right first time, and then trust on top of that. And we've talked about building relationships to get to the trust, using sales tools, multi-point inspections, etc. I want to talk now about something that I think is the far most overlooked aspect of any service department that I've ever seen, and that is appointment scheduling. Poor appointment scheduling creates more chaos for you, the technicians, and the customers than anything else. Proper appointment scheduling can make you more profitable and work more enjoyable and drive customer satisfaction through the roof. Here's why. What is your goal with appointment scheduling? Why do we schedule appointments to begin with? When I ask this to my seminar groups, oftentimes the answer that I get is, well, we want a convenient time for the customer to come visit us. Okay, sure. So when the customer calls me up and says, "I need a brake inspection done," and I say, "Okay, Mr. Customer, what time would you like to bring it in?" That's, taking care of the customer, right? It's giving them a convenient time. Is it helping me? Maybe a little bit, because I know when to expect the customer. Okay, so maybe I'm scheduling around what work I have coming in on my schedule. But there's a far more important aspect to all of this. Good scheduling accomplishes 3 things. First of all, it accomplishes maximizing your shop load, or maximizing your shop capacity. You see, if you don't have a car in that bay out there, you aren't making any money. That is productive square footage in your building. No car in the bay, no money being made. You want to maximize your shop capacity. That's your number 1 goal with scheduling. Your number 2 goal with scheduling is bay flow or workflow. It's trying to even out those highs and lows of the day. Really, really busy at 8 in the morning. Really slow at 10 in the morning. Really, really busy at noon. And so it goes throughout the day. And you get what I call the daily roller coaster, right? And we're all on the daily roller coaster. You're never going to get rid of the daily roller coaster completely, but the trick is to level out that roller coaster. Don't get the highs so high and the lows so low. Get it somewhere in between. Because technicians standing around with no cars in their bay at 10 a.m. and you're down here, that's not good for anybody. Customers backed up at your counter, technicians going crazy at 8, noon, or 6, that's not good for anybody either. Because how does that affect your customer? Well, there may be shoddy work getting done because everybody's in a hurry. You certainly will not have time at the counter to handle that customer properly. And it will actually lower your customer satisfaction. So if you can level out that daily roller coaster, you're going to increase customer satisfaction, you're going to smooth out your bay flow, and you will assure better shop loading. So how do you even out that daily roller coaster? That's the trick. Now, when the customer calls up and says, hey, I need a brake inspection done, and you say, well, what time's convenient for you, Mr. Customer, which is what you should do, the customer says 2 p.m. Great, we've got an opening at 2 p.m. So they come down at 2 p.m. What do you want? Do you want them to sit around and sit in the waiting area, waiting for the vehicle, or would you rather get them on their way? This is especially important first thing in the morning at 8 a.m. when you got everybody on their way to work dropping their vehicles off. Encourage drop-offs. Have an express drop box outside your building. An early bird drop, express drop, night owl drop, whatever you want to call it. But an express drop box mounted to the outside of your building with a slot through the door, stocked with envelopes, stocked with pens and pencils. Make sure somebody checks on that every day. So the customers can fill out the envelope, put their keys in it, and drop it through the slot. Now some of you guys are thinking this. Oh yeah, we've got one of those, and the number of keys we get dropped without an envelope, or the envelopes that get dropped without keys, good Lord. Your point's well founded. I get it. Been there, done that. How do you address it? There's nothing you can do the first time it happens. But at the counter, I would keep a copy of that drop envelope so that when the customer came up to pay the invoice, you pull out that drop envelope, you stand there with the customer, and you fill it out with the customer or for the customer, explain to them what information you need, that the keys go in it, and hand them the envelope and say, here, stick this in your glove box, Mr. Customer, and use this envelope the next time you come in. This works really well if you're having a problem collecting that information. So use these tools to avoid waiting customers, because waiting customers will get you on that big roller coaster. If they're dropping their vehicle and they're gone out of the store, that roller coaster just got a little bit smaller. Another quick tool that you can use, go to a local rental car agency. Many OE dealerships are doing this now. Go to a local enterprise, Hertz, whoever you have in your neighborhood, and say, look, I would like to offer a rental deal to my customers so that they're not waiting in my waiting room while they're performing service work. What kind of a rate can you give me? There are rental agencies out there that are offering $10 a day to certain service department customers. $10 a day. Do you think if I walk in as a customer and you say, hey, I can put you in a rental car for $10 today, how's that sound to you? Instead of you waiting here. I'm probably going to go, yeah, my time's valuable. Let's go. For 10 bucks, let's do it. Go ask your local agencies. You'll be surprised at what they say. It's all about reducing the roller coaster. You can still give the customer a convenient time, but you're trying to reduce the roller coaster. Now, let's talk briefly about shop loading, and then we'll circle back around to the roller coaster thing. How do you ensure maximum shop loading? Well, if you're using a paper schedule, that can be a challenge. And when I see shops using a paper schedule, I say to them, if I call you up and ask for an appointment, what are you looking for? And the answer is, well, white space. You know, if there's an opening on that schedule, I'm going to write your name in there. Okay, so what's to keep you from putting 60 oil changes down on that schedule on any given day versus 60 clutch jobs on any given day? Big difference, isn't there? 60 oil changes, not real profitable, not going to tie up base for very long, but 60 clutch jobs, very profitable, but going to overload your shop, won't they? So how do we handle this? Part of my job as an instructor is to give you information. It may not be something you can do now, but I'm going to tell you how it's done in the perfect world, and then you can decide how you want to do it. And the information I'm going to share with you is basically how the service management systems, the better ones, account for scheduling. And they use something called a time bucket. Now, we'll talk about technician efficiency in a little bit, and you're going to have to keep track of technician efficiency in order for this to work. You're going to measure your technician efficiency. And real quick, technician efficiency is number of hours they're physically in your shop versus number of hours that they bill. And you want 100% roughly. If I know that on any given week, the technicians I have in the shop can turn 100 hours for me, then that's my time bucket for the week. I have 100 hours of available time to sell my customers. Even if they're all here 40 hours, but they produce for me 100 hours in a week. That's what I have available to sell. That goes in my time bucket. Now, customer calls me up and says, hey, I need an oil change. I subtract, say, a half hour from the time bucket. Mr. Smith, minus a half hour. There's the oil change scheduled. Now I've got 99.5 hours to schedule. And this is what you're going to do for all your regular shop operations. You'll know roughly how much struts take, shocks take, tires take, alignments, etc. You create a list, you figure out what that average is, and you subtract that average amount of time for every service, for every appointment from your time bucket based on technician efficiency. Okay? So you've got a time bucket full of time you're subtracting from. Now, what screws this up? I'll tell you what screws it up. Upsells, carryovers, tow-ins, broken parts, poor diagnosis, right? The list goes on and on and on. So what do? I'm willing to bet that you can track your average weekly upsells, right? You may do it now. Or maybe you know it intuitively. Know what your average weekly upsells are. Say it's 20 hours. Say every week that we're in operation, we upsell about 20 hours worth of work. What do I do with the number? I subtract it from the time bucket before I even start scheduling. So my 100 hours of available time to sell, I subtract 20 out of that 100 for upsells, right off the top. Now I have 80 hours available to sell, assuming I'm going to upsell 20 from those 80. Well, what do you do for carryovers and tow-ins and all that? You know roughly, how much of that you see in a week. It's not about perfection. You'll never get it dialed into where it's 100%. But you're trying to even out the roller coaster. You're trying to maximize your shop load, your shop capacity more often. So from that time bucket, subtract the upsells that you can't easily track. Subtract, the approximate, say we get about 4 hours a week of carryover work. Okay, so now we're down to 76 hours we have available to sell. You can do the same for tow-ins if you get a lot of those. And you can modify these numbers based on your experience as time goes on. Create them now. Just start tracking them for the next month. And figure out a time bucket. So let's say we end up with 60 hours available every week to sell. What else is going to mess this up? Well, okay, here's the thing. How many people answer the phone in your shop? If you're lucky, it's one. But more than likely, it's anybody that can be near a phone, right? So that relies on everybody answering the phone to subtract their amount of time that they scheduled from that time bucket. Yeah, ruh-roh, you know what happens. So how do you minimize the effect of me continually forgetting to subtract the time from the time bucket? And at the end of the week or by the middle of the week, we think we have 10 hours left to sell and we really are minus 5. How do you handle that? Well, here's one way of minimizing that. Say there's 3 of us that can answer the phone, 3 of us that can schedule appointments. You take your 60 hours of time in your time bucket and you divide it by 3. You give me 20 hours, you give him 20 hours, and you give her 20 hours. Every time we answer the phone, we subtract from our own 20-hour time bucket. That way, if I'm forgetting to subtract, I'm only affecting that 1/3. I'm not affecting the other 2/3. They're still selling from theirs. Now, what happens if they run out of theirs and I haven't sold anything from mine? Well, they come to me and say, hey, I need 5 hours of your time. I give them 5, I subtract 5 from my time bucket, and we trade time, essentially. Again, it's not 100%, but you're trying to minimize the roller coaster. You're trying to minimize your overall effect. So, 3 things that proper scheduling does: maximizes shop load for maximum profitability, evens out bay flow to help get off the roller coaster, and by doing so provides time to properly handle the customer. Make sense? More to come. So now I'd like to tie together the customer satisfaction piece and the whole relationship building piece with the scheduling information from the last section. I mentioned during the multi-point inspection discussion the importance of pre-scheduling appointments for customers. It does a customer a favor in the sense that they can budget for the expense, they know what to expect, and that's the context of pre-scheduling in terms of the multi-point inspection. It does something more for your organization, however. Pre-scheduling appointments keeps the customer coming back to you, and that's what you want. Depending on your customer's driving habits, you may only see them 2, 3, maybe 4 times a year. By pre-scheduling appointments, especially when it comes to the multi-point inspection and the preventative maintenance menu, you can keep them coming back 4, 5, and 6 times a year. The more times they come back to your store, your organization, the more touches you have with that customer, the more likely you are to build a relationship with that customer and get future upsells and future sales from that. Now, some organizations are challenged with pre-scheduling appointments. Depending on what your current scheduling process is, if it's a schedule pad, if it's a notepad, you might have a challenge with pre-scheduling because you only got so many sheets of paper on that pad. And if I want to pre-schedule an appointment 3 months out, maybe you can't do that. I would strongly encourage you to explore with your associates what you can do to pre-schedule appointments. It's really, really important. Doesn't matter to me if you get a desk calendar and hang it on the wall, you know, one of the real big ones with 6, 8 lines in it to write on, or use an electronic calendar associated with your email program. It doesn't really matter to me how you do it, as long as you as a business have the ability to pre-schedule my next appointment so that, like I said before, I'm driving down the road and I remember, oh yeah, I was due for those front brake pads and you know, have my rotors turned, and I see a shop that looks pretty available right now, but if I remember I've got an appointment with you, I am far more likely to come back to you. So be thinking about what process you can put in place to pre-schedule customer appointments before they leave your store. It changes the multi-point inspection discussion. It changes the preventative maintenance schedule discussion. You know, just like the multi-point inspection sheet, you should be presenting the customer's preventative maintenance schedule to them every time they come in. You can keep it in their file or you can print it out based on the appointments you have in the day. But have the discussion with them. They may not buy it today, but pre-schedule that appointment so that you get the work, you get the money, and you get the chance to form the relationship with the customer. Now, with that said, let's talk about service management systems real briefly. There are a lot of different service management systems out there. As long as we've had computers, service management systems have been available. Here's some advice I'd like to offer you regarding service management systems. Make sure, number one, it will link to your website so that you can give your customers the ability to schedule appointments online. That's really, really important. The new generation coming up in the market today, they want to schedule appointments online. They don't want to pick up the phone. You don't want to be answering emails all day long. So make sure that your service management system, whichever one you choose to purchase or to migrate to, has the ability to link to your website so that they can schedule appointments into your system via the internet. Number two, make sure, of course, it links to your financials. You want to be able to do financial analysis through your service management system. Number three, make sure it has a scheduling program that works for you. We're going to talk in a little bit about work schedules and hours of operation. Make sure your service management system can help you with setting employee schedules and appointment scheduling. Make sure it's got a time bucket, like we discussed in the last section. Make sure that you have the ability yourself, you don't have to call anybody to have them do it, make sure you have the ability to go in and change labor times, to go in and change technician efficiency, to modify certain aspects of that system so that you can track what you want to track and you can make the schedule work for you. So think about pre-scheduling customers' appointments and think about moving to, if you haven't already, an electronic service management system that can link to your website, help you with scheduling employees and customers, and link to your financials. Okay? More to think about, more to come. Keep up the work. So along with scheduling, let's talk about your hours of operation. Now, this may be a subject that you might not want to go anywhere near, but I ask you this. Why are your current hours of operation set the way they are? And if I surveyed 100 people, I am guessing that at least 90 of them would tell me that they set those hours of operation based on their own work schedule. So say your shop's open at 7 in the morning and maybe you stay open till 6. Maybe you're only open till 5. Whose hours are those? Are those your hours or are those hours for your customer? Customer convenience is the big motivator for them coming to you to have their vehicle worked on. Think about that. Think about that motivation. If you don't open till 8 o'clock in the morning and I need to be at work by 7:30, you may not get my business. I may be looking for somebody who opens at 7. Or maybe I like your express drop or your night drop and I use that. That's fine. But what happens if you close at 5? What time do I get out of work? I get out of work at 5. I'm never going to make it to your shop, and or I got to get out of my meetings early, or I got to get out of my job early, and that can create a problem. So think about your hours of operation in terms of your customer and your customer convenience. I suggest 7 to 6. It's an 11-hour day. I understand. I'll give you a solution for that in just a second. But 7 in the morning, most customers can get their vehicle there by then. 6 at night, many customers can get back to you by 6 to pick up their vehicle. Some shops are open 12 hours, 7 to 7. That's fine. How many days a week are you open though? And this is the big question. This is the $64,000 question. How many days a week are you open? Many shops I see, they are open Monday through Friday because nobody wants to work Saturdays, right? And we certainly don't want to work Sundays. Okay, so think about the customer convenience thing in relation to being open Monday through Friday. Is Saturday a more convenient day for many customers to have their vehicle worked on? It certainly is. If you speak to many OE dealerships, that's the driving force behind them being open Saturdays and even Sundays. It's about customer convenience. Now, the reason that many of you have just closed your ears to this whole discussion is your first thought was, I don't want to work Saturdays, and good luck getting my people to work Saturdays, right? And I agree. None of us want to work 6, 7 days a week. I don't blame anybody for that. But there are solutions available to you to help with your hours of operation and extending those hours of operation. One solution is to use an alternative work schedule, which I'll discuss in the next segment. But what an alternative work schedule does for you is this. It allows you to be open 6 days a week, a full day on Saturday, and capitalize on the most profitable day of the week, that being Saturday. Now, I've talked to shops that say, yeah, we tried that. We were open Saturday. Well, how long were you open Saturday? They go, well, we were open till noon, or we were open till 1 o'clock. That doesn't work. You know why? What kind of work do you schedule? Well, since you don't want to go over noon or go past 1 o'clock or schedule too much work on a Saturday, the only work that gets scheduled on Saturdays is oil changes and tire rotates and simple, non-profitable stuff. The stuff that is easy to schedule and you don't stand a chance of working until 3 when you're supposed to be out at noon. Well, the only way you're ever going to get around that and make Saturday your most profitable day, which I promise you it will become, is to be open a full day on Saturday. If you treat Saturday like any other day of the week and you have full hours and full staff, you will make Saturday your most profitable day. And you will have added a full day's worth of profits to the week and maybe even a full day more of the average profit that you make during the regular week. So think about your hours of operation. Think about why they're set the way they're set. Think about what changes you might be able to make. And stay tuned to the next segment. We'll talk about an alternative 410 work schedule. Let's talk about alternative work schedules. In the last segment, I introduced the idea that maybe you ought to be open a full day on Saturday. And that probably got a slightly negative reaction, I'm guessing, from many of you watching this. And I don't blame you. None of us like to work Saturdays. But there's such a business case for a repair shop to be open a full day on a Saturday that I really, really think you need to consider it. Now, the one way that you can do this and make everybody happy, because one of your first reactions was, yeah, you dude go tell my guys that they got to work a Saturday. I've tried being open a Saturday and it didn't work. Well, yeah, maybe you tried, 8 to noon on a Saturday or 8 to 1. And you're right, it doesn't work for the reasons we outlined in the last segment. What I would suggest to you is to consider an alternative work schedule, specifically a 410 work schedule. What this allows is for your store to be open 10 to 11 hours a day, 6 days a week with a full staff the entire 6 days. Now, In order to do this, you need 3 teams of technicians. They can be teams of 2, teams of 3, doesn't matter. But you need 3 teams of technicians. So you likely will have to add technicians. Now, if you're a 4-bay shop, then you're going to have some toolboxes on wheels. But that's okay. They come with wheels. Those guys can move them around. They'll figure it out. What happens with a 4-10 schedule is every technician works 4 days a week for 10 hours. I'm guessing right now, and I'd almost be willing to bet right now, that your technicians work at least 10-hour days right now, if not more. Most every technician I've ever met, in my experience, most shop I ever worked in, worked at least 10 hours a day. So, if they're going to be there 10 hours a day anyway, let's make it more appealing to them.